So what is the best difficulty to play on? This is a video of me playing the very final, I think, Army Terminal, which I think is the last Brooklyn DLC mission, on heroic difficulty with 4 directives on. But I unfortunately learned that fragile armor directive that I had on here at the very end of this mission, which I didn't show in this video, but at the very end it broke, like literally. My armor kits were not restoring my broken armor anymore. I mean, my armor barely breaks anyway when I'm on my tank build here, but it broke once towards the end with the most insane amount of waves they throw at you. These missions, by the way, they take way too long. The amount of waves this game throws at you is just ridiculous, and it's not just because I'm on a tank build. I can go do this on my striker gun build. I still hate the waves. Like, I hate how many waves I hate how long these missions are. They last forever. So it took me an hour and a half to get to the dumb final point soloing. And then the game bugged out. The fragile armor directive bugged out. And then I wasn't getting my armor back. So I had to do the last part with broken armor. And then I had to do the last part learning that apparently at the very end of this one, my tank build here has done heroic difficulty with directives on solo the first time on every Brooklyn DLC mission with relative ease. Until this, well, no, he was doing it with relative ease on this one too. But then when he got to the end, it's not that the difficulty changed. It's that I felt like it was harder for him. No, it's because the game throws a stupid DPS check at the end. It's a stupid timed crap to destroy. I won't say it's a special aerial drone, but yes, spoiler alert, an aerial drone. One of the biggest bullet sponge enemies of the entire game. You have to kill in a timer. And it's impossible to do it in the timer on my tank build here. So I learned it's like, wow, great, I failed this. And then you can't even call for backup. So at least when you get to the final part, if you die or you fail the objective, is what actually happened to me, you don't have to start the entire mission over, because I'm like, if I have to start this whole crap over, it took an hour and a half to get to this point. I'm out. 100% out. I might uninstall the game again, because I've rage quit so much of this game. But thankfully, it's like, oh, thank goodness it puts me there. But then I learned, oh, it doesn't even matter, because I can't call for backup. And I could have changed my build. I could have went to my striker gun build. And I know he does enough DPS to destroy the drone in time. But that's assuming he's able to not be out of cover to destroy to focus his DPS. Which I don't believe he would have done, because this special aerial drone was doing quite a lot of damage to my tank build here. He could still tank it, but he still had to use cover some. And I realized, dude, my gun build, he's just going to get shredded. And he has 5 armor cores, by the way, and he still is going to get shredded by this thing, like instantly. Like almost instantly. And when you're soloing and you're the sole focus of the attention, that just makes trying to do it on DPS builds that much harder. So I'm like, yeah, this isn't happening. So the only way to do it now, I realized, is I would have to turn the difficulty down on this guy, just so I do enough damage to destroy the dumb thing in time. Or I would just have to get a team. That's what I'm probably going to do later on, is just get a team and just run through it. Because I'm like, all right, well, I soloed all the way up to this point. I have nothing more to prove anymore. So yeah, I'm just going to get some random team together to just blow through this at some point. Because yeah, this is BS. Anyway, let's get to the meat of the video. But this is a good segue, because it's about I mentioned directives too, and also the type of mission. And that's the thing you have to take into account. Missions are different. This mission in particular, the Brooklyn DLC missions are harder than the Washington DC ones. They 100% are. And the control points are harder. The control points on heroic difficulty in Brooklyn, they honestly feel like legendary difficulty to me. Compared to the Washington DC one. Mostly because they have invincible turrets. Insane flamethrower or rocket launcher turrets that are invincible, constantly shooting you. You can't do anything about them. And then the allies you call don't also help you, because they all attack these turrets that they can't destroy. So then they all get killed by turrets they can't do anything to. It's the most unfair nonsense bug nonsense ever. And then you're just forced to do the control points solely on your own with harder enemy types and freaking invincible turrets. So, and yeah, I could do it. I have videos of me doing it. I'm just saying it's like, yeah, they're harder. They're 100% harder. Anyone who tries to tell you, oh, they're just as easy, I did it no problem. It's like, no, he's just lying. Like, they're 100% harder. And yeah, he may have done it no problem, because I did it no problem, but that doesn't mean I still can't sense a difficulty spike when I see it, even if I'm able to beat it. That is definitely the case with Brooklyn DLC, both for free roaming and the missions. They clearly, when they did this DLC, the devs, they just want to throw more BS at players constantly. It's like, what more unfair mechanics can we add to screw over the players more, is what these devs are always thinking about, I can tell now. So, yeah, you have to remember that when choosing difficulties too, because you have to remember where you are as well. But we're going to try and speak it generally, though, on general things that apply, I think, close to everywhere. First off, directives. Directives, well, I just told you about one I was using here that apparently is bugged, so don't ever use it. Fragile armor is BS. It doesn't even work, and it makes it even more harder because it just denies you your armor. You literally can't get your armor back anymore. So until you like quit the game and come back in. I tried everything besides that, and nothing worked. Someone recommended like switching out of your gear, like manually, and I did that, and it still didn't. It's still, my armor kits still weren't doing anything. Like you use an armor kit, you lose an armor kit, and then it doesn't take away the fragile armor. So it's just the worst of both worlds. So yeah, don't use that directive. As for others, it's really up to you. Directives. So I'm coming at this video from the perspective of what difficulty makes the most practical sense, not what difficulty is the most fun for me personally, or what difficulty do I want to play on just to force myself to give myself an extra challenge just because I want to do that difficulty. This is about practicality. So mostly it's about gear grinding. When it comes to the grind of the game, what one makes sense the most. And it really depends on the area and what build you're doing. So I'm on my pure tank build here. For him in particular, it's heroic difficulty. Now, I'm going to say this. Legendary difficulty is never worth your time. No matter what build you're running, no matter what team you're on, it's never worth the effort. Because the extra challenge it gives you, there's virtually no reward from it. Like, I do not notice any kind of extra gear. I think you get more XP, which is the directives. So let's talk about the XP with directives and legendary. So yeah, you get more XP with like directives with legendary difficulty. But all that amounts to is SHD, which long term becomes less and less important. So long term wise, it's not that important anyway. Even short term, it's like if you don't mind grinding a bit longer, which I really don't, because that's the whole point of this game anyways, just grind forever. So I really don't even care if I'm getting less XP, but that's kind of up to your preference. So yeah, directives, it really is just up to personal preference rather than practicality to me. Because SHD is really, it helps practically in the short term. So you could justify occasionally that. I would say maybe just use the directives that make the most sense with your build, that don't hurt your build the most, and also aren't bug directives. So never use fragile armor because it's bugged, and it's even worse than you can imagine. Yeah, so directives, I would say, like short-term wise, yeah, go ahead and use them practically for getting your SHD level up to where it needs to be as quickly as possible. But other than that, long-term wise, I don't really see them having much use, honestly. So the big thing is what difficulty level, like heroic, challenge, all that stuff, which one's the best then. So again, I went saying legendary. Legendary is not the best in my view, because the loot it's really, legendary is just there if you just want to have a challenge, and that's it. When sometimes, and that's fine, I do it. I solo legendary on this tank build sometimes, just to do it, just to do it, just to see if I can do it. But it's never worth my time. I don't get more loot. Also because it takes longer to do it. So again, it's like legendary is a harder difficulty, so that means it takes you usually longer to do than heroic. And then you're sitting there wondering, well, did I get any kind of better loot generally, especially since it took me, some sort of percentage longer than if I were to do this on heroic, because I had to take my time more, or I died more and had to respawn more. Like what happens then? And the answer is absolutely not. I do not notice a high roll of like perfect. People say, oh, you'll get like perfect roll mods. I don't see that, not generally. I've gotten perfect roll mods on heroic. I've gotten perfect roll mods on challenge difficulty. So, no. Legendary, not worth the time at all. So what is it? Again, I say for this build in particular, maybe heroic, but I actually don't think that. I think the only reason I play heroic difficulty I only ever play heroic with directives on my tank build when I'm soloing. It's because challenge feels too easy on him at this point that I just want the extra challenge. But I would say, honestly, even on this tank build here, if you're only going to solo on a tank build, then you should still, practically, you're going to get more for your effort and time still playing on challenge difficulty than heroic, because he would be able to do it quicker. He would just be practically immortal, practically immortal on challenge difficulty. So it's it would be insanely easy at that point for him in particular. And that means he would clear faster too. And yeah, for the loot wise, it's not much different than heroic. So this is when I'm going to say, it depends on groups and if you're soloing. If you're playing in, a full group, 4 people, especially if everyone has, a build, too, a good build, then absolutely heroic difficulty is the way to go. It's the way to farm, because in a good team, you'll still not have much difficulty doing heroic versus challenge either. And then heroic does give you, slightly better loot drops and slightly better gear rolls than challenge difficulty can give you. But here's the thing, challenge difficulty can still give you all the gear rolls heroic can give you. It's just not quite as common, is the only difference. But again, when you're on a full team and you're able to kill enemies and clear the mission almost as fast as heroic as you can on challenge, then yes, in a good team, always pick heroic difficulty for your farming. But soloing, I'm going to say right now, I'm convinced now it's only challenge difficulty. Challenge difficulty is the way to go if you're soloing, because you will still get the same gear types as you do on heroic and even legendary, and you will still get rolls just as high on heroic as on legendary, just not quite as frequently. But the difficulty scaling is so much lower that you can feel it. You can feel it even like my striker gun build, who's not a tank build. But on challenge difficulty, he still is not really feels, I wouldn't still call him a tank, but he's very close to feeling like an actual tank at that point. With 5 armor cores, yeah, he's close on challenge difficulty to actually feeling like a proper tank. But then unlike my pure tank build here, he can shred the enemies. So he's shredding the enemies on challenge difficulty, while rarely, if ever, being at danger of dying. But the name is perfect, though, because honestly, it's still challenging. Challenge difficulty is still a challenge. I still have moments on my non-tank builds that I get close to death, or I might even die if I get flanked too hard, and I didn't plan on it, even on challenge difficulty. So yeah, it can still feel like a challenge, but also doesn't feel super unfair and just beating your head against the wall and nothing is worth your effort. Which heroic can feel like that. Heroic, but specifically Brooklyn heroic on anything but a tank build. Oh man, it's just I feel like it's a nightmare, honestly. And I can solo it. My non-tank builds can solo heroic. The question is it worth my time? And I'm thinking still, absolutely not. It's not worth your time. So yeah, right now, I would say challenge difficulty is the way to go. Also, and this is a big thing, because if you die during a mission on challenge difficulty, you don't start the whole mission over, unlike heroic. And yet the loot drops are not much worse than heroic. And the enemies are substantially easier, and you don't have to worry about starting the dumb mission over again. And I just told you, these missions, all of them, the DC ones too, but the Brooklyn ones are the worst. They are ridiculously long. So I'm like, yes, absolutely. Challenge difficulty is the only way to do it, in my view. The same applies to Countdown. There's a reason why almost everyone plays Countdown on challenge difficulty. Also, Countdown is harder because you have to deal with hunters, and the enemies are much tankier. But I will say this, the good thing is that the enemies, besides the hunters, the enemies in Countdown, the damage they do against you is still matching their difficulty level. So challenge difficulty Countdown, the enemies still hit you just as hard as challenge difficulty enemies do. So which is why my tank build, besides the hunters, he's able to just, again, be practically immortal during Countdown, because most people will only play on challenge difficulty. For the same reasons I'm saying here, it's like practically, it's the best thing you can do. If you want the highest chance at beating Countdown, especially Extraction Zone, with a cobbled together random team where you're not communicating a bunch with each other, which is most of the time I find in this game, then yes, challenge difficulty, Countdown is also the perfect difficulty. Now, what about open world? Because open world is a bit different in my view. Control points in particular, they actually give you, like control points you usually farm for blueprints, not really the loot. The gear loot is just a bonus. The primary reason I will farm control points in free roam, which is the most important thing in free roam for me, are control points. The main reason I farm them is for field recon data, SHD calibration, all these things that help you optimize your gear once you get the build you want, but you have to increase the rolls. Field recon data in particular is like one of the most important resources I've learned. And besides crafting it, which you can do from other resources, the fastest way to get the most for your effort is farming control points. So free roam control points have to be taken into account. And Heroic gives you the most field recon data. So if you do, they give you one per difficulty level. So normal difficulty, you just get one field recon data. Hard, you get 2. Challenge, you get 3. And Heroic, you get 4. And that extra one from Heroic, especially when you're having to farm so many control points to stack a lot more field recon data, I find it's way more worth your effort. Now, is it harder than challenge? Well, obviously. But, again, I would say it kind of depends on your build again, because here's what's interesting, I would say. My tank build here in this video you saw. My tank build, I will only ever practically to. It's not just for the challenge. Practically wise, I want to only fight level 4 control points. By the way, if you're a noob, that's also what happens during control points. So if you play on story difficulty, like normal difficulty, and you do events close to a control point, you'll see the alert level rise. What that is just increasing the difficulty of the control point specifically. So even if you play like on challenge difficulty, if you do an event close to the control point, like an execution or a territory control, if you complete one of those events and there's a control point nearby, you'll see the alert level go from like 3 to 4, for instance. And then it's actually heroic. So you're actually dealing with heroic elite enemies at that control point then. So you can't even avoid heroic difficulty at control points. So yeah, my tank build, he's only ever going to free roam on heroic difficulty because it is the most practical one for him. It's much easier for him to do it as a pure tank build, and you get more field recon data. It's not just about the loot anymore, it's also about specific resources. Now, I would say when I'm soloing on like my gun build, my striker build, my skill build, both of them can yes, they can definitely do heroic control points consistently too. Sometimes faster than my tank build. But again, sometimes, because the thing is, my tank build can sometimes do it quicker than them because he doesn't have to be behind cover constantly. Because here's the thing, on free roam, you never know. When you're doing a control point, the difficulty of the control point can honestly scale all over the place. Sometimes a heroic control point can go very smoothly, and sometimes it can be an absolute nightmare, if you're not a tank build especially, because other events will trigger while you're doing the control point. So suddenly, an elite patrol shows up. Suddenly, a territory control gets activated. suddenly a resource convoy gets activated, and suddenly you're dealing with even more waves of enemies, and even more waves on heroic difficulty of enemies, attacking you constantly from all directions. And then sometimes rogue agents show up, and my builds, besides my non-tank builds, can do rogue agents. They can do all of that, but I have to say, it can get very frustrating on heroic difficulty doing all of that. So I actually would argue on non-tank builds. For me personally, I actually would find playing free roam on challenge difficulty, but then doing control points on, like, raising the control point level and doing them on heroic is still worth it, because you get more field recon data. Now, it's not much, to be honest, so honestly I can't see myself carrying that much. The big thing for me is that if you activate other events, or if rogue agents show up at your control point, if you have the world difficulty set to challenge difficulty, even if the control point enemies were heroic, all the other enemies that may get triggered to attack you, that may get triggered during the control point, will still be on challenge difficulty. So if rogue agents show up at the end of the control point, they will be on challenge difficulty. They won't be on heroic difficulty. If you trigger an elite patrol that happens to walk by during your attack on the control point, they will be on challenge difficulty. They also won't be on heroic. And again, loot-wise, it's not much different. And as I said, resource-wise, it's not that much different either, because, yeah, you get one less field recon data, but that's not the biggest thing either. It's like, okay, you get 3 instead of 4, but also you clear the control point, I would say, substantially quicker on challenge difficulty. That you could make an argument when you're playing on, like, a DPS build on challenge mode, that it's still easier to do the control point. I think you can make that argument, actually. So now, me personally, I still only play on heroic, even on my non-tank builds, but that's mostly, again, it's me wanting to have a challenge, and it's also me just not wanting to change the difficulty for the sake of another build, because I play on my tank build a lot, and like I said, my tank build, it still only makes sense even practically to play on heroic free roam, because he can easily tank the heroic control point and anything that might get triggered. He laughs at rogue agents, by the way. Like, he will just get straight up in their face and just shoot them in the head over and over again until they die, until they drop down dead. My striker build, my DPS builds, they quake in their boots when rogue agents show up. Now, I've beaten them, I've soloed them, but I've died a lot to them too, because they do so much damage. And like I said, they get access to every skill in the game. It's, again, everything in this game is unfair to the player, including rogue agents, because they don't get 2 skills like the player does. They get access to every skill. They will hit you with riot foam, and then they'll hit themselves with a fixture drone, and then they'll also throw out a restore hive. They'll also throw out an artillery turret. Like, they'll do everything. So that's another tangent, though, about how unfair this game is to the player. But this is also why we're talking about what's the most practical difficulty to put on them. So yeah, I would say it has to be challenge difficulty for most content. I actually don't agree that I think a lot of players would say, no, play heroic, which is the hardest difficulty for most content, because legendary is something you can only do on specific zones anyway, so you can't even turn everything on legendary difficulty in the game. But heroic is the hardest well, it's always at minimum the hardest difficulty. Anywhere you go in the game is heroic, especially with directives on too. While we just established directives really are just up to you, in my view. I don't really find them that useful. They don't even, some of them don't even feel like they increase the difficulty too much. They kind of just change a little bit how you play, but they don't even feel that hard. Like Fog of War is annoying. It's not that impossible to overcome. Just like a fragile armor wouldn't be that annoying either if it would work the way it says it works, but it doesn't. But yeah, when it comes to just straight up, like not talking about directives, just talking straight up legendary versus heroic versus challenge versus hard versus normal, challenge difficulty is the best. And when you think about it, it makes sense because it's the perfect middle of all of them. It's literally 3 out of 5. There's 5 difficulty levels. Challenge is the third one. Although it's, like I said, on a lot of content, there is no legendary difficulty option, so you're only left with the 4 up to heroic. And yeah, challenge is the best overall. even like I said, even in free roam, I would say you'd be better off, especially if you're not on a tank build, setting free roam to challenge difficulty. So what have we established now? So I would say if you're in a good team, not necessarily the best team in the world, no, you don't have to be, but everyone at least just has a build. Whatever the build is, they at least have a build that works. Like, and you're especially a team of all four, then heroic difficulty is the way to go. Grind-wise, the most consistent, the easiest compared to still getting the best loot. I would say definitely heroic difficulty for the most part. There may be instances where challenge is still superior. I think that actually could still be the case in certain places, but for the most part, yeah, heroic difficulty. Not challenge. No, I mean not legendary, because legendary, again, it's just there for effort, really. Now you can get exotic caches from doing the daily legendary stronghold in a team or solo if you actually do it, but that's still not worth your effort in my view, because you can get exotic caches just farming countdown constantly. And let's talk about a countdown. You can do that in like challenge. I think I did already say that too. Like countdown, I also would say challenge difficulty is always the best consistent one option to choose. I only do heroic when I'm like on a very specific build I'm trying to test out and make sure, especially a team-based build where I'm trying to make sure it's a good version of the build, then I might do a heroic countdown. But for the most part, I also only do challenge difficulty on countdown. It's just the most consistent loot, really. And the loot is hardly different again than on heroic countdown. But again, like Brooklyn, this is what I need to talk about. Brooklyn DLC, both the main story missions and the free roaming, the control points, the free roaming experience, they all feel harder than DC ones. Like if I don't think they're actually as hard as Legendary, but I would say they kind of go in between. Now I haven't tried one yet, but honestly, I can't imagine me ever wanting to do one of, especially like Army Terminal. I can't imagine ever seeing me want to even do that on Legendary difficulty. Never solo, but even in a team, I don't think I ever would want to do it. Even though I probably could do it, but again, there's players have preferences. I don't want to do it at the end of the day. It's not about skill that I can't. It's just about, like, I don't want to suffer that crap. And Legendary is never worth your time. It's just there for just if you feel like having a extra challenge. And Legendary, again, you can't even play the whole game on Legendary difficulty. It's only certain content that lets you do it. Otherwise, Heroic is the hardest difficulty, technically. So, yeah, Heroic definitely in teams. But if you're soloing, definitely challenge difficulty. Because you don't have to worry about dying and going back to the very beginning of the main story mission if you die once on Heroic. If you die on Challenge, you just go back to the next, spawn point. You'll have to do that area again, of course, but only that area, not the whole freaking mission again. And you also probably won't die as often on Challenge, of course. So, or ever in some situations. So yeah, it's like challenge difficulty definitely all the way in solo. And the reason I bring up Brooklyn is because even though I would say it depends on the area too, because Brooklyn is harder, my conclusions don't really change for Brooklyn either. I would still say Heroic and teams. Now, that would be one instance where I might say you might find it better to play on challenge difficulty even in teams, if your goal is, again, just gear farming and loot farming and having the most, practical grind, then I would say even in teams you might want to play only on challenge if you're going to do Brooklyn for that stuff. But I would still probably stay Heroic, though. But I would definitely never go below challenge anywhere in the game. So you may be wondering why not say hard for Brooklyn then if you're going to solo? No, because this is when it gets to the huge difference in loot between hard and challenge. So like I just told you, there's not much difference between challenge and heroic or even legendary. But there is a huge difference between hard difficulty loot and challenge difficulty and above. Because first off, exotic chances. You always have a small chance for an exotic red drop on challenge difficulty. And heroic and legendary, and also, again, another reason why challenge is usually best, especially solo, because I honestly don't really see the chances increasing either for it. It seems like they're relatively the same chance no matter what difficulty you're on, for those three at least. However, if you're on normal or even hard, I don't think I've ever been in a mission on those difficulties where an exotic dropped. I don't think I've ever seen one drop. So that's one reason. But that's not the biggest reason. The biggest reason is high-end gear. It's yellow gear. Because most of your gear in this game, it's going to be, yellow. If it's not blue. I forgot to talk about blue. So Foundry, like all these Striker, all that stuff. I mean, technically, you could actually farm them, I think, on even story difficulty and still get... I mean, there'll be lower rolls, but you can still get the roll you need. Like something, if you want one with armor or crit chance, you could probably still get it even on story difficulty. It just will be take you much higher and more resources to grind it up, though, since it'll be a lower roll than on any other difficulty. But still, the big thing is the yellow gear. It's the high-end gear, because every build is going to incorporate at least some of that into their build. And you get that's the most common thing you'll get. So you get way more of that on Challenge. You get way more of that on Challenge and above. And if you play on hard difficulty, you're still getting purple gear. You're still getting superior gear, which at this point in the game is trash. At this point, you never want to use purple gear. And you still get that to drop on hard mode. And then if I play on normal difficulty, I notice it's almost only purple gear. Even if you're on level 40 and you're doing you've reached the max level and you're on normal difficulty, you rarely see yellow gear, which is like, hello, you absolutely need that stuff for a build. So that's another reason. Also, another reason is just the resource grinding, because when you get the build you want, I always, scrap all this stuff. I scrap all the yellows, all that stuff for resources. And you get substantially more resources scrapping yellows than you do purples. But again, if you're playing on normal or hard difficulty, you're getting mostly purples. Whereas if you go to challenge, it's when it starts completely different. That's when you only get yellow gear and above. I don't think I've ever seen purple gear drop in challenge. Maybe like a few times, but it's very rare. I've definitely never seen purple drop in heroic. Maybe I've seen it drop in challenge difficulty, but it's very rare. I think it's the vast majority of the gear drops on challenge difficulty will be yellows at that point. So there's a huge spike too between hard and challenge when it comes to the loot type that drops. And you get way more resources, like 50%, I think, more resources scrapping yellow gear than you do purple gear. So that's why I would never, ever recommend hard difficulty, much less normal difficulty, for anything in this game. If your goal is to still have a decent, loot grind on a decent difficulty for that, challenges you. So, yeah, my ultimate conclusion is challenge difficulty if you're soloing, and heroic if you're in a group. Although you might find you still want to do challenge in groups depending on the group, and if you're in Brooklyn or specific missions that might be more annoying too, you might want to do challenge then as well. There's also another reason, like if you do, the reason you should also be in a group on heroic difficulty is then you only have to start the whole mission over if the whole team wipes. You don't have to worry about if you go down starting the whole mission over either, as long as either your teammates finish it for you or they're able to get you up during it. So even more reason why I say, it makes sense to still be on heroic if you're in a team, though. But yeah, if you're soloing, I feel like challenge difficulty is the best way to go. And then in Countdown specifically, I think you should only ever play on challenge, actually. So it looks like challenge difficulty, in my view, actually has the biggest sway. I think challenge has the biggest... you deal with the least amount of BS for the most amount of loot on challenge difficulty. That's what it comes down to. You deal with the least amount of the game's BS for the most amount of loot on challenge difficulty. But in certain situations when you're in a good team, it still makes sense for the sake of the grind to bump it up to heroic for everybody rather than just you. So that's my ultimate conclusion.